welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Ahmad with you at BTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important topics. The first is, of course, going to take a look at the political situation of the country, especially in the recent developments that have happened in KP and Punjab, and then, of course, in the National Assembly as well, with regards to PTI's decision of dissolution of the two provincial assemblies, and perhaps also referring to the return to the National Assembly. How exactly is that going to happen? Of course, still remains a question mark, and whether or not this can be done with regards to fulfill the objective that the PTI chairman has claimed and other PTI leaders have claimed to be the ouster of the current political setup. In the meantime, we've also seen that the National Assembly Speaker has accepted 34 resignations from the PTI and one from the Awami Muslim League. And of course, there's a lot of accusations coming in from the PTI side as well that this was done with ill intent. There is, of course, a lot in terms of what exactly is going to happen with regards to the elections in the country, which the PTI chairman Imran Khan, in an interview with BBC Urdu, has referred to, saying that this is going to happen as soon as April, and this is what is expected. And he's also mentioned the talks with regards to a caretaker setup, and perhaps also being one of the motivations of the return to the National Assembly. But it remains to be seen, of course, whether or not that takes place, since the current political setup has time and again reiterated that the government will be completing its tenure and that the elections will be held on due time. There is, of course, the elections that are going to be taking place in KP and Punjab, but the general elections will take place after the completion of the tenure of the current government. What the PTI chairman has also mentioned in the interview is that they don't have any relationship with the new army chief as of yet, but what they want to focus on is again the accusations that he has leveled against the institutions and also the former army chief General Bajwa with regards to his involvement in political matters, particularly with regards to his own ouster and what he calls the imposition of the current government. So we'll take a look at what this means again with reference to what the PTI has been saying for the past year, what it means in terms of where we stand as part of the economic challenges that exist. The foreign reserves, of course, are an all-time low. The IMF 9th review has still not happened. And then, of course, the talk of the elections is also concerning. So we're going to be taking a look at that at our first segment of the show today and discussing what exactly are the options for both PTI and the PTM. In our next segment, we're going to be taking a look at what the Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has also said in an interview with Al Jazeera, where he spoke about the policy of appeasement that was adopted by the previous regime headed by the PTI chairman Imran Khan, and said that that was a wrong approach towards the Afghan Taliban and the TTP within the country as well. And this is something that has been changed by the current government, and they are proceeding with a different approach. The National Security Council meeting that was held earlier reiterated the fact that there is going to be a zero tolerance policy for terrorist groups and that there will be no space for terrorist organizations within the country. Of course, we've seen a rise in terrorist activity, especially since the end of a ceasefire between TTP and the government, and then, of course, with reference to the military actions that have been taken in the past. We've seen that there is a lot now that perhaps needs to be dealt with, both at the military front as well, and then, of course, the kind of security that Pakistan needs to provide its citizens. There is also the report that has come out also talking about how the last month of the last year had witnessed the highest number of terrorist activities. That was also post the end of the ceasefire. And the entire year also saw an increase of 28% from 2021, which is the most highest in the past 5 years as well. So the issue of terrorism, of course, is a big one. But what the foreign minister was referring to was the fact that the Afghan Taliban need to be engaged. And despite the fact that Pakistan, of course, has reiterated that the soil of Afghanistan should not be used against Pakistan, and this has been reiterated by the Prime Minister as well. Of course, Kabul has denied this, but the foreign minister is of the opinion that engagement is the only option for Pakistan, and it shares a long and porous border with Afghanistan, and so disengagement is not an option. And this is what needs to happen with the Afghan Taliban to ensure that they fulfill their international commitments. So we're going to take a look at that in our next segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by senior analyst Farooq Patafi, and we've also been joined in the studios by Mr. Hafiz, Ahsaan, Ahmad, the khokhar, who's the advocate Supreme Court. We've also been joined by Mr. Zulfikar Ali Pada, who's the spokesperson to Chairman PPP, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. Thank you very much, Zulfikar Sahab, for joining us online and taking the time out. Let me start with you,
Thank
Hafiz.
you for
Considering,
inviting
of
me.
course, the situation that we see at the political front, there is, of course, a lot of developments that have taken place in the past few days, many in the past few months as well, which put us to the question as to where the political situation is currently going. But with reference to the moves that the PTI has recently taken, especially in KP and Punjab, in the dissolution of the assemblies, and then now the reference of a return to the National Assembly, what sort of options are available for the PTI? Wasn't this particular move also with reference to impacting at the center and providing a catalyst for the elections to take place? And also, when we talk about the ouster that is being planned by the PTI chairman with reference to a no trust motion at the center, what sort of legal options exist? Because they keep referring to being able to do that without the PTI turncoats affecting the numbers.
There are three aspects of this cases. One is the aspect is the national level. We talk about the National Assembly of Pakistan. The second, there is issue of the dissolution of the provincial assemblies. And the third is why the PTI since April 2022 has been absent from the National Assembly, and the resignations were not accepted despite the fact it was challenged before Islamabad High Court. And Islamabad High Court made the observation that this is the internal proceedings of the National Assembly of Pakistan, and this is the prerogative of the Speaker, that how he conducted the resignation proceedings. Now come to on the first side that two things are happening now in 2 or 3 days. One is the advice by the Chief Minister of Punjab to the Governor for the dissolution of the Assembly, and the Governor of Punjab within 48 hours has endorsed the advice of the Chief Minister, and the process is going on now at the stage of the committee for the caretaker Chief Minister, where both the parties have given their respective names. To the extent of the KPK, the advice was moved, and the Governor has endorsed or accepted the advice of the Chief Minister, and there is no more KPK assembly in field. And now there will be a process of electing or selecting the caretaker Chief Minister. If it is not decided by the Chief Ministers, then goes by the committee. And ultimately, I think that all the process, either at the national level or at the provincial level, they would be finalized or decided by the Election Commission of Pakistan as per Article 224A of the Constitution. Now, what is the impact of accepting the resignation by the Speaker of the National Assembly? So to me, now this is another inconsistent stance which we are seeing for the last April 2022, where one party is saying otherwise, and after some time he acted on otherwise. Now the Speaker keeps saying that he needs a verification, the personal verification of the signatures, and suddenly when the PTI chairman came on air and said he has and showed some intention regarding coming back to the parliament, they have accepted the resignation of the 34, the PTI, and one from the Awami Muslim League. So what is the come out of it? That there is a political disconnectivity between the political parties, which is not in favor of the Pakistan. And the second important thing would be that if we are going in this particular chaos situation for holding the election in Punjab or KPK without having the election at the National Assembly, then there would be another disaster. And we have experienced the election recently held in Karachi, that local bodies elections were held, and there was hue and cry by all the sides, either by the People's Party or by the Jamaat-e-Islami or by the PTI. If it is happening at the level of one district like Karachi in Pakistan, if it would not be held in a way where every party would consider that he would be a winning party, then in addition to that, we are in the economic crisis, we are in the money constraint crisis, we are in the dollar paucity situation in Pakistan, we are unemployment increasing in Pakistan, and so much so our foreign direct investment has been decreased for the last 1.5 years. So that would be a troublemaking for the people of Pakistan, for the country of Pakistan, when particularly we have more than 236 million population, and more of them, 64%, they are the youth people, and they have a future in Pakistan. So I request in that, being a student of law or what I am seeing in the courts, that all the political parties should sit together. They should be engaged. This is, the demand of a politics or the democracy, that all stakeholders should sit together and decide in a way to create a situation, to take out the situation, a political or the economic situation in Pakistan.
Absolutely. But Hafiz, the question with regards to the way the numbers are going to be affected in the National Assembly if the PTI does return still remains, considering that there is, of course, what we have seen earlier coming in from the courts on this matter. Is there any way that this can be prevented by the PTI, what they're talking about in terms of how they're going to go ahead with the motion?
There are three seats in the National Assembly which are important. One is the leader of the opposition, and after the 18th Amendment, the leader of opposition is to be consulted by the leader of the House on 3-4 major areas. One is the appointment of the Election Commission members, which they have done. So the job is over to the extent of the leader of the opposition. The second most important appointment was the appointment of the chairman NAB. That is done. The third most important would be the appointment of a caretaker prime minister. And what we are seeing for the last 3-4 years, both the political party, either on the opposition like the PDM and the PTI, they have failed to engage themselves. So ultimately the matter will go to the Election Commission of Pakistan. And finally, the only thing would be left for the leader of the opposition, if PTI returns, is the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. That is the prerogative after the 18th Amendment, to be nominated either by the leader of the opposition or by him to someone else, which the last opposition did. The leader of the opposition nominated some other person, and he was acting as the chairman Public Accounts Committee. So in this particular session, there is no thing left for the PTI in the National Assembly. Most of the legislation they have passed, especially the NAB law, and many of them they have passed by the sitting. What now the most important thing would be, only the left is that if all the political parties, they are going for a general election on one day in all over Pakistan, which should be in this particular situation, then this is the only way the PTI
will get
some
let's talk more about that with Zulfikar Sahab. Considering, Zulfikar Sahab, the situation at the moment and what the PTI chairman has referred to in the interview as well, is that he's, of course, predicting that the elections are going to be held as early as April. And we've seen that the current political setup has time and again denied that possibility. But then, considering the situations that are arising, especially out of the provinces of KP and Punjab, also from the way our economic situation is progressing, and also with regards to the reference of PTI's return to the National Assembly, does any of this put any change in perhaps the solid decision of the government completing its tenure and the elections to be held in October? Could there be any possibility, in your opinion, of what the PTI chairman is referring to?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Sana, for having me. First of all, I would like to state that this parliament seems like completing its tenure, and I don't see any possibility that elections are going to be held before time. Mr. Khan, as he stated that he wants to go back in the assemblies, I think he should go back, because after even accepting the 34 resignations of the respected members of the National Assembly, he has still number of seats with whom he can go back in the assemblies and back up the seat for the leader of the opposition and chairman Pakistan Public Accounts Committee, which is his right. So Mr. Khan is confused. You see, he was first not understanding the importance of going back in the assemblies. Then they were going in the Supreme Court for the acceptance of the resignations, which were accepted by the Speaker of the National Assembly. Now they are saying that they are going to go in the court again, that Speaker should have not accepted the resignations of 34, 35 members. So they are not actually politically mature. Mr. Khan is still confused and he is still using his options as he has dissolved his own two governments, Punjab and KPK, that is more than half of the Pakistan. And what if, I'm just discussing a scenario, what if the elections are not going to be held on time in Punjab and KPK due to a number of reasons or whatever the current circumstances Pakistan is going through, especially the economic problem we are facing. So, do you think that he has made something from this decision? I think it will be a state of failure that whatever decision he has made, it was not a political decision, not shows his political maturity out of this decision. And this national unity government is having a consensus, and our leader, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, is very uh, positive about this thing that this assemblies or national assembly is going to complete its tenure, and there is no doubt about it. And if there is any doubt for PTI that these 35 number of MNAs with for whom the resignation have been accepted. I think this national unity government doesn't have any issue, or they were not afraid of the vote of no confidence coming from PTI, as all the stakeholders in national unity government are going to stay all together till the completion of this parliament, this tenure. So I don't foresee any problem in it, though they have
Okay.
reservations with each other on number of issues, but they are going to stick together to complete this tenure.
Right. Farooq, the dissolution of assembly in Punjab came as a surprise, and then, of course, we saw the KP dissolution as well taking place. And perhaps this is something that wasn't expected, considering the previous statements made by the PTR claims that weren't followed through. But now that we're in this position and we have both the assemblies dissolved, the PTR chairman, of course, is justifying these moves by saying that this is due to the reason that he wants to bring in stability and the fact that this was perhaps a way of forcing early elections. What if when we look at the future and in the way that things may evolve, that we have elections in KP and Punjab, and we don't have the kind of early elections that the BTI chairman seems to be wanting out of these moves? Does that mean that this all of these decision making by the PTI side is going to be for nothing?
Right, Sana, and that is a brilliant question. I tell you why. Because the way our media, as I pointed out yesterday as well, is skewed and their worldview is skewed, they keep on actually making everything about Imran Khan Sahab's success and failure of the ruling coalition. Because of that, you will see that Imran Khan Sahab's every microaggression is forgiven by the media immediately. But whenever the government of Pakistan does something or somebody associated with does something a little bit aggressive, then they immediately start calling out and complaining, right? But the fact remains that no matter what pundits say in this country, the fact is that only a year ago, Imran Khan Sahab was the head of the country. He had majority in the parliament. He had, two provincial, governments, and also was an ally in the coalition in Balochistan. So practically 2.5 or 3. And then Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan governments also went to him. He had every lever that was available. And yet he has very systematically removed one power after another. First, he actually lost his government because of inflexibility and because of his confrontationalism. Then he decided that they are going to walk out of the assemblies, federal assembly, and they left national assembly as well, resigned actually. And now, finally, they have managed to throw away the, remarkable advantage they had, because 50% of our country lives in Punjab, and there he had his government, and he could have actually used it to his advantage until the election day. And Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is gone too. So at this moment, what levers Imran Khan Sahab has? For example, tomorrow something happens, and somebody says that we are not going to hold elections at all, right? How will Imran Khan Sahab react? What will he do? He doesn't have assemblies or through which he could have made laws, through which he could have agitated. He doesn't have the kind of influential positions like CMs, because he's going to lose CMs the day caretaker CMs take over. What happens then, right? He will have the only thing that he has been using for past 25 years, and that is street agitation. And that also has diminishing returns. We have seen it. He came to Islamabad. He could have, if he could have mustered the kind of support he wanted, he could have toppled the government, as he was claiming. Didn't happen. So I see a party where just because of insinuations, because of paranoia, speculations, listening to every busybody, they have ended up removing all the edges they had. And in the end, of course, in the parliament also, remember a day before yesterday, I reminded you that this is not 2014. When they had walked back to the parliament and they were welcomed back with open arms. There is a subtle difference. What is that? At that time, 2014, the incumbent government at that time had only been in power for 1 year. The parliament had to complete its 4 years term, right, for the 4 years. And this time you are literally at the end of the term of an assembly. So it doesn't bother the speaker or the ruling coalition if Imran Khan Sahab stays there or not. That's why they have gone for culling. It is called culling, where you actually practically remove all the leaders from the pack and then see how everybody goes haywire. So that is exactly what is happening right now.
All right. Well, of course, with reference to the PTI stance, it remains to be seen whether or not they are able to make decisions that are better for the party in the country. But Hafiz Saab, considering the dissolution of both the assemblies, there's also the talk of the 90 days time period and the fact that there, of course, needs to be a caretaker CM and then taking after, of course, the decision making with reference to the elections there. But we were also hearing earlier that there might be a possibility of a delay in this case. And I want to understand whether or not this time period includes this decision making as well, and what can possibly be the factor in of any delays in this regard, and how will they be even justified if we have a 90 days time period?
And this question also, will this argument at all compute in any court of law that there is going to be a census first, because CCI actually had agreed on that, and whether delimitation can be a legitimate excuse to push the deadline forward?
Now there is two legal and constitutional questions. One, if the census process is underway, can the election be held in Pakistan? So the answer is that now, if there is a force clause in the constitution, that the constitution says that if the assembly is dissolved by the chief minister and his advice is accepted within 48 hours or not, automatically the election has to take place within 90 days. So there is no second argument on it, that on the basis of the census in the country, that the process is underway, you can't stop the clock of the constitution for holding the election in a province. Now at the center, still this is the discretion of the Prime Minister whether he sends an advice or not. If he does not send the advice, so automatically the census process would take place around June or July 2023. So if thereafter the election would take place in September or October, so there is no issue with the National Assembly in Pakistan. Now to come to the second point is that if there is a mandatory provision given in the constitution, if it is not being followed, what is the consequence, and if it has to be followed? So the first answer is that we have seen this experience from the last judgment of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, when a vote of no confidence was moved against the former Prime Minister of Pakistan. it was debated in the National Assembly. First, it was passed, and when there was going to voting take place, the Deputy Speaker abruptly, set aside the motion moved by the opposition, and with reference to Article 5 of the Constitution, and soon thereafter, the Prime Minister of Pakistan advised to the President of Pakistan for the dissolution of Assembly, and further the President of Pakistan has asked to the former Prime Minister to work as a Prime Minister till the new Prime Minister would come into power. So the Supreme Court intervened, and they set aside all the proceeding, reverting back, and now the
absolutely. But sorry to cut you, I just wanted to have a quick follow-up, because you were talking about how a census is not going to impact the elections in these two provinces. CCI, the Council of Common Interest, during Imran Khan Saab's time, had actually adopted this move that they are going to actually, when the next elections take place, they are going to be according to the new delimitation, according to the new census, right? So that motion carries, and it is going to be around. Now you are saying that it is not going to apply to two federating units which are actually heading towards the elections, right? The question is then, is there a way that the honorable courts can stop this entire process from carrying forward, because then it will be astounding that in the two federating units and at the center you will have new delimitations, but in two others, particularly the most populous one, there won't be any new delimitation at all.
We have seen this experience in Karachi, that the MQM boycotted the election on the basis of the delimitation, that there were serious flaws in the delimitation, and to some extent they were right, because there was some proportional problems in one union council has a big strength and the other has a small, and it was a prerogative of the provincial government, and at the nick of time the provincial government withdrew the letter of the delimitation, but Election Commission of Pakistan said, as we have announced the election schedule, and there is a judgment of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, so the election would take place.
Right, but
so
Hafiz, don't you think that's a different situation altogether as to what Farooq was
micro
pointing
and
out?
macro,
Yeah. Now we come on this point, who can do it? Now all the state machinery or the state institution, they have to act under the Constitution. Now one thing only be left is that if the federal government makes a reference to the Supreme Court of Pakistan regarding interpretation of such questions, which to the extent of the CCI decision and the census, so that would be the only way where if the Supreme Court holds that have a stay on it, go on the decisions or the results of the census.
There is a possibility.
So there is a possibility, but that possibility only lies with the Superior Court being the ultimate arbitrator.
Let us go now to Zulfikar Saab. With regards to what has happened in Karachi, and especially the kind of ruckus that we have seen between party workers of PTI and PPP, we see that both the political parties have been blaming each other as to be the cause of this commotion and the kind of incidents that took place. But in terms of how elections are held in the country, and of course what we need to see, and now of course in KP and Punjab, and eventually the general elections in this year, how do we make sure that we have the kind of measures in place also with regards to the collection of results, and then with regards to the way that we need to protect our returning officers and the poll booths, where of course there will be tensions on the rise. We have seen that the country has been extremely polarized. There is a lot of political tensions that have been going on and rifts between parties. How will this be something that we can maybe learn from and to prevent it in the coming elections?
Sana, if you see the history of elections, this has been happening since the day one, since the elections have been happening. I am watching these. There is a fight between the local workers at the local level between different parties. Since 88, I was a small kid at that time. So it happened in 1990, 93, 97, 2002, 2008, 13, 18.
Right.
And
so,
this polarization
does this mean it's inevitable, or the fact that we haven't learned anything?
No. No.
And do we make peace with it?
This have been happening in all the elections. What is needed right now is that all the political forces, stakeholders, including establishment, all the institutional heads, have to come down on one table and sort out the issue. Because this is a matter of Pakistan and the people of Pakistan. Because if you just uh, let the people go for a fight at the local level, this is not the solution for the problem. Because all the political parties have to deal and train their workers to come up for a solution at the ground level, ground zero. So I personally feel that if it's us, so if it's happening and somebody is pushing and pressurizing the RO at the local level or presiding officer at the local level, so we have to counter that because they don't have that much of force at the ground. So the clash becomes between the two parties. So
Right.
what I am saying and what I am suggesting that this has to be dealt with all the institutional heads, with all the stakeholders, because there is no solution
Absolutely.
at the ground
And
level.
that is of
The
course
number of
that
the
is of
number
course
of
the need of the hour, and we hope we get to see
people
that.
is very, very huge. The number of people are so huge all
Hmm.
around the country that all the security forces, even if they combine, if they join hands together, they cannot control. So this has to be dealt
Right,
with the
but the
heads of the
mechanism and the process needs to provide that control, right? Not just manpower. But thank you very much, Zulfikar sir, for joining us, and thank you, Hafiz sir, for being a part of the discussion as well. We'll take a short break here and continue with our next segment. Welcome back to the debate. We're now going to be taking a look at what the Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has spoken with regards to the issue of terrorism in Pakistan and the engagement with the Afghan Taliban. In an interview with Al Jazeera, he mentioned that the previous approach taken by the PTI chairman and the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was wrong, and that the appeasement policy left a lot of problems for the current government to deal with, and that they have changed it now for the betterment of the future and, of course, to deal with this rising threat of terrorism. Which of course has seen an increasing rise, especially in the aftermath of the end of the ceasefire by the TTP. At the same time, the foreign minister has also emphasized that there needs to be engagement, and that's the only option for Pakistan, as it shares a long border with Afghanistan and of course needs to protect its soil and so needs to engage with the Afghan Taliban currently present in Afghanistan and to ensure and support in terms of the commitments that they have made to the international community and for them to be able to fulfill that. For this and more, we've also been joined by Brigadier retired Mr. Raashid Wali Janjua, who's Director Research IPRI, and we will be taking a look at of course the kind of options that are available and the way that we want to proceed with this. Welcome to the show, Janjua Sahab. But with regards to what the Foreign Minister has spoken now and even before as well, he has emphasized on a certain re-evaluation of strategy, and we saw that there was a National Security Council meeting and there was a lot of emphasis taken with regards to a zero tolerance policy. But help me understand when we did not have a zero tolerance policy, and how exactly will that help us in engaging with the TTP and other terrorist organizations now? Are we really perhaps making the kind of re-evaluation that is necessary? And then when we talk about the future strategies, are we prepared enough for that?
Thank you very much, Sana. Now, once we evaluate these strategies and these policies, we should keep in mind that any insurgency, especially the kind of insurgency which is imposed upon us by TTP, it's a long drawn out affair. So it's not something that can be solved through a magic bullet. And it also takes a lot of efforts, negotiations, and many shifts in strategies. We know between negotiations and actual fighting, there comes a stage where the insurgency itself loses steam and starts collapsing from within, which many terrorism experts like Jurgens Meyer say that any insurgency which is religiously inspired and uses terrorism as a tactic actually gets more reinforced if you try more kinetic means against it. What he's essentially saying is that you must remove the causal, basis of that insurgency. Now, there are contending views on that, and then we also know there are people who say that there should be no negotiation of any kind with these insurgents, but one size fits all approach does not work at all. You got to have a nuanced policy. What works for ETA and Basque separatists, what works for Italian Red Brigade, what works for LTTE in Sri Lanka, what works for FARC in Colombia might not work here in our neck of the woods. So we must take a stock of what the nature of this insurgency and the tactics of terrorism is.
But Janjua Sahab, what of the insurgency at home and the kind of terrorist organizations we deal with at home? Is there the distinction also present in terms of what you're referring to in different countries? Even within Pakistan, we'll have to make a decision as to what sizes are there?
Of course, we have to make the distinctions because there are several militant organizations.
Have we been able to do that as yet?
I think we have been trying in the past to do that because there are different kind of insurgencies. One is, BLA led insurgency in Balochistan, and one is this TTP led in our newly merged districts. Both are different in their scope and in their ideology. But coming over to TTP and the kind of statements that have been given by the current government, I think these statements are correct in the current context in the manner that we have tried our hands at negotiations. Negotiations, they say, have to be done with a clear strategic objective and by the right people who are the experts and after a complete consensus between civil and military components of the state. Whether that was done in that manner in the past is a moot question. Now, now we come to the current, nature of this TTP. TTP is not a monolith; it's an assemblage of different factions. Their flavor is different. For example, those in North and South Waziristan, they subscribe to the ideology of, grievances. Against use of Pakistan territory for fighting for United States. In Orakzai and Kurum Agency, it's more ideological, linked with Al-Qaeda. In Khyber Agency, it's downright thugs and criminals who are banded together for their criminal enterprises. In Bajor, it's more like Al-Qaeda, and in Malakand and Swat, it's for the imposition of Sharia, ostensibly what they earlier on agitated for and fought for.
Right.
But their overall objectives, whatever their political objectives are, those cannot be ennobled through a blanket amnesty and negotiations, because once we do negotiations with terrorists, one is the question of their legitimizing them. So once you legitimize an entity politically, that gets more traction. But
Right,
the
absolutely. And I understand your point, Janjua Saab, but with regards to, of course, the kind of blanket negotiations or amnesty that you're referring to, understand how that may not be the best option for us. But Farooq, then can we have a blanket military approach as well, or one where we deal with these terrorist organizations, including the TTP, with a single approach as to a no negotiation policy or no rehabilitation policy? Can we also afford that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why not? We have been doing exactly that for 20 years. And that seemed to be working before the previous government actually literally tried to reverse everything that we had done. And I'm going to address that as well. But let me first to inform or remind our viewers that even today a security convoy patrolling Pakistan-Iran border came under attack by terrorists from the other side of the border. And 4 of our personnel embraced shahadat, right? So the matter keeps on, expanding if we don't actually take on the terrorists immediately. Now, I totally get Janjua Saab's point that there are various shades of terrorist groups. But for me, anybody who's using force, because monopoly of violence actually, at least according to Max Weber, belongs to the state. And whosoever is actually trying to challenge that monopoly and who is trying to attack either civilians or then state apparatus to instill fear or terror is a terrorist. So what is the easiest way? Whether they are Baloch, whether they are TTP, whosoever actually tries to do exactly that should be paid back in the same coin. And my concern regarding the previous government's, back roll of whatever was done, right, is very simple questions. I give you 4 questions. And if Imran Khan Sahab, because he keeps on talking about these matters, right, and I think Bilawal Bhutto Zardari literally hit the nail on the head when he was talking about this thing, because there are 5 questions which need answer. Sana, 1, Imran Khan Sahab says that tens of thousands of people were to be rehabilitated and they had to be settled in the FATA area. Question is, were they, did they go through any kind of rehabilitation program where they were de-radicalized, or you just wanted to bring them back and settle them and allowed them to do whatever they wanted? The second thing is, in ex-FATA, who decided in the end that all the pickets or security pickets should be removed? The third one is regarding fence. Pakistani army has been painstakingly building up this fence. Why is it that for consistent time during Imran Khan Saab's last time, Afghan Taliban and Pakistani Taliban were allowed to walk away with kilometer-long, fence, cutting it and removing it and just walking away with it. The fifth one is regarding what happened in Afghanistan. We knew that Afghan Taliban are ascendant. Where was our plan B? Where was our contingency plan? Did we not know that Afghan Taliban are not going to accommodate Pakistan's request regarding taking a kinetic action against TTP? If we knew it, where was our management system?
Right.
So all of this belongs to Imran Khan Sahab, and he needs to answer it, because if he doesn't, then he is singularly responsible for bringing back the menace of terrorism in this country.
Right, and there's a lot of questions that he asked regarding accountability, and perhaps there should be some to him as well. Janjua Saab, regarding the engagement with the Afghan Taliban, that's also a concern, considering that Afghanistan soil is used against Pakistan's territory, considering the fact that we don't see that the Afghan Taliban perhaps is either willing or capable to deal with the kind of terrorist threats that emerge from their own soil, and be able to provide the kind of facilitation that Pakistan is hoping for. And so the way that we have seen the past year unfold, the foreign minister, of course, is stressing on an engagement policy with the Afghan Taliban. But how do we proceed further with an emphasis on protecting our own soil and to be able to deal with this issue of terrorism while we engage with the Afghan Taliban?
You see, it is very simple. Afghan Taliban and TTP have to be, kept apart as far as our approach and strategy of engagement and kinetic action is concerned. TTP is a terrorist organization that is using Afghan soil to attack Pakistan, and Taliban regime in Afghanistan needs to be continually sensitized about that thing, quite aggressively through diplomatic channels, through track 2 channels, and through our other engagement modalities which we have been using in the past, because we have just no option but to engage with the Taliban regime because of our geopolitical compulsions and the security environment overall prevailing in South Asia. As far as the TTP is concerned, those 500 and 600 recalcitrants who have managed to cross over the fence using that appeasement window of opportunity,
Right.
negotiations, I think these need to be eliminated through full force of our counter-terrorism apparatus, while there should be some engagement with Afghan regime to rein in the rest of the elements which are still regrouping and trying to use Afghan territory for attacks on Pakistan.
All right. Thank you very much, Janjua Saab, for that, and of course for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Farah, as always, for being a part of the debate. That's all we have from this show, and we'll be back tomorrow with more news and updates, and we hope that we have things progressing in the right direction. That's all that we have. See you tomorrow.